Rain hammers the tin roof of the lone service station at the edge of town. Detective Marco Alvarez sits in his car, engine idling, eyes fixed on a grainy photograph balanced on the steering wheel. It's a boy, maybe 12, staring blankly into the camera. Behind him, an unlit room with no windows. From a radio, last seen 3 days ago. Anyone with information. But Alvarez already knows. This isn't a missing persons case. It's something else. Something worse. 3 nights earlier, Alvarez's phone rang just before midnight. Caller ID blocked. A voice, low, trembling, but deliberate, gave him an address. No name. No explanation. Just, he's in there. If you want him alive, go now. Minutes later, Alvarez was on a deserted country road. Headlights cutting through the fog. He reached a dilapidated farmhouse with no lights. No sound except the wind scraping the corrugated siding. Inside, silence thick enough to choke on. Upstairs, an empty bedroom. Floorboards warped. A single children's shoe under the bed. In the shed out back, a padlock. Heavy. New. Alvarez forced it. The smell hit him first. Stale air, damp concrete. Then the boy, huddled in the corner, bare feet crusted with dirt, wrists raw from rope. But when Alvarez said his name, the boy flinched. You're not supposed to be here yet. Before Alvarez could respond, a sharp creak behind him. The shed door slammed. Darkness. A whisper in the dark that wasn't the boy's. Too soon. The lights flickered on. The boy was gone. No footprints. No sound. Just a concrete floor and a thin scrap of paper where he'd been sitting. 7 words, scrawled in jagged handwriting. Stop pulling threads you can't see. Most detectives would have written it up as nothing. Alvarez didn't, because the handwriting on that note, he'd seen it before, in a case file locked in evidence storage, from a man who'd been dead for 12 years. He didn't know it yet, but that night was the first step into something that wasn't just a case. It was a trap. The next morning, Alvarez was at the precinct before the sun came up. He didn't bother signing in. Straight to the basement, past a metal shelf stacked with forgotten evidence. Case hashtag 93-451. The handwriting on the note was identical to the scrawl in this file. The file of Thomas Avery, a man accused of abducting 3 children in 2003. Avery never stood trial. His body was found in a motel bathroom. Wrist slit, door bolted from inside. But Avery was a detail hoarder. He wrote everything down, times, dates, names, and in the margins, strange phrases. One of them, Unit 0, don't let them film you. At first, Alvarez thought Unit 0 was just a nickname for Avery's van, until he spotted something taped under the last page, a small brass key, scratched into the metal. 0. The moment his fingers closed around it, his phone buzzed. Block number again. The same voice. You moved too quickly. Now you'll have to see the rest. Click. Rage facility at the edge of town. Rows of identical metal doors, each with a number stenciled on in peeling white paint. Number 0. Until he walked the far end, where a rusty utility door sat recessed into the wall unmarked, except for a faint circle scratched into the paint. The key slid in like it belonged there. Inside, darkness, rows of shelving, VHS tape stacked haphazardly, no labels, a single old TV on a rolling cart. Alvarez slid in the first tape. Static. Then the boy from the shed. Same blank stare, same bare feet. But the timestamp in the corner was today's date. The boy lifted his head, looked directly into the camera. You still don't get it. Behind him, in the corner of the frame, Alvarez himself, standing in the shadows. Alvarez froze. The version of him on the tape shifted, took a step forward. Something gleamed in his hand. The static cut back and before Alvarez could see more. But when he ejected the tape, another one was already waiting in the player tray. This one had a single word written in that same jagged handwriting. Tomorrow. Alvarez didn't sleep that night. He set the Tomorrow tape on his kitchen counter and just stared at it while the clock crawled toward dawn. By 5:30 a.m., he was outside the storage unit again. The door was locked. The key wouldn't turn. and there were fresh boot prints in the frost. Not his. Back at the precinct, Alvarez poured through Avery's personal effects. Photos, receipts, scrap paper. One Polaroid stopped him cold. The storage facility, but decades older, its walls unpainted metal, and Unit Zero's utility door standing wide open. In the reflection of a rain puddle in the photo's foreground, a blurry figure, broad shoulders, face lost in motion, and behind that figure, faintly visible, Alvarez. Except this photo was time-stamped April 2003, the same week Avery died. By mid-afternoon, Alvarez was running on caffeine and adrenaline. He retraced Avery's known haunts, the motel, the diner, the abandoned playground. Everywhere he went, there were subtle signs someone had been there first. Cigarette ash still warm, a coffee cup still steaming on a counter. At the playground, the swing moved lazily, though the air was still. Tied to the chain, a strip of magnetic tape, the kind pulled from inside a VHS, written on it in marker. You can't catch what's already there. He caught sight of movement between the trees. A man, or something shaped like one, watched him from 50 feet away. Alvarez shouted, "Police, stay where you are." The figure didn't run. It just tilted its head like it was studying him. Then it stepped back and vanished into the tree line. In the dirt where it stood, Alvarez found another Polaroid, this time of himself, taken just seconds ago from the exact angle where the figure had been standing. Night fell. Alvarez locked every door, checked every window. He set the Tomorrow tape into the player, his service weapon on the coffee table in front of him. Static. Then, the view from inside his apartment. The grainy camera moved toward the couch where Alvarez sat now. In real life, watching himself on screen, the Alvarez on the tape turned, looked into the lens, and whispered, "It's not me you're chasing." The screen went black. Alvarez spread every photo, tape, and note across his kitchen floor. From above, they formed a rough spiral, not coincidence, not random. The earliest date at the outer edge, the newest, the Tomorrow tape at the center. Someone had been feeding him breadcrumbs in chronological order, and the next step was already waiting. A rental receipt Avery had signed, but dated next week. The address led Alvarez to an industrial park. The lot where the unit number should have been was empty, just wet asphalt and the hum of a single streetlight. But when he stepped forward, he saw it. A faint door outline shimmering against the rain like heat ripples. The door had a number plate. 0. No walls. No building. Just the door, hanging there in the drizzle. When he tried the knob, cold, locked. From the other side, something knocked. 3 slow, deliberate taps. That night, Alvarez's phone buzzed. No caller ID, just a text. "Stop hesitating. We've been waiting too long." A second message followed, an audio file. He hit play. It was the sound of himself, recorded from somewhere close, muttering, "Don't open it yet, don't open it yet." Then a scrape, then a door creak, then silence. The following morning, Alvarez's wristwatch was 3 hours ahead. His phone was 12 hours behind. In the evidence locker, half the Polaroids had changed. The reflections now showed a different Alvarez. Gaunter, eyes sunken, wearing clothes he didn't own. In one photo, that other Alvarez was holding the Tomorrow tape. In another, he was holding a rental receipt. Only the date read last week. By evening, he heard footsteps in his own apartment when he was still 3 blocks away. Inside, nothing was stolen, but the Tomorrow tape had been moved to the center of the living room floor. Balanced on top was a brass key, old, worn, teeth filed in strange, uneven ridges. Underneath, scrawled in thick black ink, "Tonight." Alvarez takes the plunge and finally uses a key. From here, the hunt for Avery becomes almost secondary. Survival is a real objective now. The tone shifts into nightmare logic, but the breadcrumbs remain grounded just enough for the audience to think, this could still be real, right? The door to Unit Zero stood exactly where it had been. In the empty lot, rain hissing on asphalt, Alvarez held the brass key tight enough for the ridges to press into his palm. One slow turn in the lock. A click. The air seemed to pull toward the door, as if the world exhaled. When he opened it, there was no room, just a corridor, unlit. Somewhere ahead, footsteps echoed, 2 steps forward, 1 step back, then gone. Every 20 feet, a door, every door, a peephole. Behind each peephole, a version of the same apartment. Sometimes his own, sometimes Avery's. Sometimes a version where the furniture didn't match, or the clock had no hands, or the shadows moved in slow, syrupy waves. He passed one door where the peephole showed himself, but the him inside was smiling, holding a knife, and mouthing something over and over. You're late, you're late, you're late. The corridor ended in a mirror, not a wall. A full-length mirror framed in dark wood. At first, it was just his reflection. Then, the image stepped forward while he stayed still. The reflection held up an envelope. Alvarez reached toward the glass and felt paper in his real hand. The envelope was addressed in Avery's handwriting. Inside, a single photograph. It showed Alvarez asleep in his own bed last night. Only in the photo, a figure stood over him, wearing his face, but wrong. His breathing turned sharp, ragged. The idea of finding Avery felt suddenly irrelevant. This wasn't a rescue anymore. This was about getting out. But the corridor didn't go back the way it came. When he turned around, the door he entered from was gone, replaced by yet another peephole door. This one showed Avery, sitting cross-legged on the floor, staring directly at the peephole. She leaned forward until her eye filled a circle and whispered, "Don't let him in." From somewhere behind him, though behind didn't seem to mean anything here, came the 3 slow knocks he'd heard before. Only now they didn't sound like wood. They sounded like they were coming from inside his skull. His vision narrowed. His legs moved without him deciding. Step, 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 until he stood before a final door, one without a handle, only a keyhole. He bent down, placed a brass key inside. Turn. Something on the other side whispered, "Now is my turn." The lock clicked, but this time it wasn't opening the door. It was a door opening toward him. The hinges groaned like something ancient and reluctant, and beyond it, nothing. Not darkness, not light, just a kind of emptiness that made his stomach pitch, like standing on the edge of a drop he couldn't see. Then a shape slid into view. It was tall, too tall, with limbs that bent wrong. Its face, at first, it was his, then Avery's, then his again, only with eyes that didn't blink and a mouth that moved just slightly out of sync with the words. "You've been looking for me." The hallway behind him was gone. Instead, he stood in his apartment, but the clock read 3:11 a.m. and rain hammered the windows. He could hear the shower running in the bathroom. He didn't own a shower. The entity's voice came from behind the bathroom door. "You left it unlocked." He reached for the doorknob, and when his hand touched it, the world inverted. Now he was standing outside Avery's old building in daylight in 2019. It wasn't just showing him places. It was moving through them with him. Everywhere he went, the air felt thinner, like the space around him was only being rented. Through shop windows, passing buses, reflections in puddles, there it was, sometimes far away, sometimes closer. Once, it was standing right behind him in the glass of a vending machine, hand resting lightly on his shoulder. Even though he felt nothing, he shoved his hands into his jacket pockets and felt paper. A folded note, in Avery's handwriting. "If you see me, it's not me. Run." When he looked up, she was across the street, smiling, waving him over. A second later, she was gone, replaced by the tall, wrong-limbed shape wearing her smile. The sound of 3 knocks again, louder this time. Each knock pulled him somewhere else. Knock 1. He's at the lake the night Avery vanished, watching police drag the water. Knock 2. He's inside the Unit 0 corridor again, every peephole showing himself asleep in different rooms. Knock 3. He's on the floor, gasping, staring up at the entity's shadow as it leans in and whispers, "Your turn to answer." The rain outside thinned to a drizzle, but inside Alvarez's small, cluttered apartment, the air felt heavy, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath. Every tick of the clock seemed louder, sharper. marking not just time passing but time unraveling. Alvarez sat at the desk, the brass key from Unit Zero resting beside a half-empty cup of coffee. His eyes were bloodshot, mind racing through every detail he'd uncovered. Every tape, every strange encounter, every impossible loop he'd witnessed. But none of it made sense. At least not yet. The last message from the boy echoed in his head. Rule 3, you don't search for the truth. The truth searches for you. That wasn't just a cryptic warning. It was a puzzle, a game, and if Alvarez was going to survive it, he had to learn the rules before the rules learned him. His phone buzzed again. A text from an unknown number. Looked behind the mirror. Time bends there. He rose, the unease curling in his gut like a snake. The bathroom mirror was cracked, a spiderweb pattern stretching across the glass. Alvarez wiped away the condensation and glanced closer. Faint scratches had been etched into the frame, barely visible in the dim light. Coordinates, a date, a time. The coordinates pointed to a forgotten part of town, the old railway station, abandoned since the tracks were torn up 20 years ago. The time? 3:33 a.m. Alvarez knew he shouldn't go. Not yet, but the pull was magnetic. The story wasn't waiting for him to be ready. It was dragging him deeper. He grabbed a flashlight, stuffed a key and his badge into his coat pocket, and stepped into the night. At the railway station, silence was thick enough to choke on. Shadows flickered in the corners of his vision. The platform was crumbling, overgrown with weeds, the rusted rails disappearing into darkness. A flicker of movement caught his eye. A figure standing at the edge of the platform, watching him. The boy, "Why are you here?" Alvarez called out. No answer, just a soft tapping. Tap, tap, tap from the boy's fingers. Suddenly, the ground beneath Alvarez shifted. The world blurred, colors bleeding together, sounds distorting. When it cleared, the platform was empty. The boy was gone. The clock tower in the distance chimed 3:33 a.m. Alvarez felt it then, the timeline bending around him like a living thing, warping his memories, twisting cause and effect into knots. He wasn't just a detective anymore. He was a player trapped in a game without rules, forced to guess which version of reality would stick long enough to survive. Behind him, a voice whispered from the shadows. "Welcome to the rules, detective. Let's see if you can break them." Got it. Here's how Act 7 deepens, layering cryptic clues and haunting visions that blur Alvarez's grip on reality while pushing the tension to a breaking point. Alvarez's breath fogs the cold air as he stares at the cryptic symbols scratched into the back of the cabin's weathered door. They shift subtly when he blinks, like the marks aren't just etched into wood, but woven into reality itself. His phone buzzes with a new message. No sender name, just a single phrase. The mirror cracks at midnight. Suddenly, the walls seem to breathe, shadows stretching and recoiling like living things. Alvarez blinks again, and for a heartbeat, he swears his own reflection winks at him from a cracked mirror hanging crookedly on the cabin wall. Visions flicker in the corner of his eye, fleeting glimpses of a young girl, maybe Anna, maybe Leah, whispering something unintelligible, her voice overlapping with a child's cough echoing in the distance. The VHS tapes keep appearing as dreams, but now the footage is warped, time bleeding into itself. Moments repeat, but in reverse. Faces distort into impossible shapes. A voice calls his name, but it's his own, layered with dozens of others. A new clue arrives. A torn page from Clara's notebook, dropped mysteriously into Alvarez's jacket pocket. On it, a line underlined thrice. Find the clock that doesn't tick. He recalls the frozen clock from the strange room, the one with hands that never moved. When Alvarez visits the town's abandoned clock tower, the air grows thick with silence. Inside, the great clock stands still, hands frozen at 11:42. Suddenly, a whisper comes from the shadows. Time is a circle, and you're the center. The floor beneath him shifts, and for a moment, he's tumbling through time itself. Snippets of his own memories flash. The fishing trip to shed the storage unit, but with subtle, wrong details that unsettle him. Every attempt to trace the truth makes the lines between past, present, and future blur further, and the sense of being hunted intensifies. Alvarez's footsteps echo behind him, but when he turns, no one is there. Still, a chill runs down his spine as he hears the unmistakable click of a camera shutter at his apartment. The walls pulse with a quiet hum of static. The corkboard rearranges itself overnight. New photos ping. Faces he doesn't recognize staring back. Eyes filled with silent warnings. The boy from the cabin appears again in his dreams, mouthing the words. The rules are changing. As midnight approaches, Alvarez returns to the cracked mirror. This time, the reflection speaks. You're not just in the story. You're the story. And the mirror cracks wide open. Alvarez wakes in the pitch black of Unit 0. The door ceiling shut behind him with a bone-chilling finality. The air is thick, heavy, as if time itself has become a dense fog pressing against his skin. Around him, the walls pulse with faint light, flickering like a heartbeat, sinking to the ticking of clocks he can't see. Screens flicker to life, each showing different timelines. Moment he's lived, moment he hasn't, and moments that never should have been. A voice, calm, ancient, and chilling, fills the room. You follow the threads. You've danced in my labyrinth, but the question remains, why? Alvarez's heart pounds. The voice feels both everywhere and nowhere, speaking from shadows cast by no visible source. I'm not your puppet. Alvarez growls. I want answers. The room shifts, folding in on itself. The walls become mirrors reflecting infinite versions of Alvarez, each trapped in their own loop, repeating moments of failure, fear, and confusion. The entity laughs softly. Answers? They're just stories you tell yourself. You want control, but control is an illusion. Suddenly, one mirror cracks open, and from it steps a figure. Tall, cloaked in shifting shadows, eyes glowing with cold fire. I am the storyteller and the story, the watcher and watched. You can't outrun me. Alvarez steadies his breath. Then show me the truth behind the lies. The entity gestures, and the room explodes into a montage of memories and possibilities. Clara's fearful glance at the lake, her last note, the boy in the cabin, tapping Morse code, the hidden shed, the storage units, the endless hallway, Alvarez's own fractured reflections, each one pleading, fighting, breaking. The entity's voice cuts through the chaos. All of this, it's a game, a test. The lines blur because they must. Reality fractures so you can see beyond the veil. Alvarez clenches his fists. If this is a test, I refuse to fail. The entity leans in, voice dropping to a whisper. But failing is part of the narrative. Without darkness, there is no light. Alvarez's flashlight flickers, then steadies. He steps forward, eyes locked on the entity. I'm done being a pawn. This ends now. The entity smiles, a glimmer of respect. Then prove it. A pulse of energy surges, and the screens go dark. When the lights return, Alvarez finds himself alone. But in his hand, the silver heart-shaped necklace, warm and pulsing like a beating heart. Outside, a distant clock chimes midnight. Time is running out. The silver heart-shaped necklace pulses softly in Alvarez's palm, like a quiet heartbeat sinking with his own. It's more than a keepsake now. It feels like a key, a weapon, a promise. He steps through the long hallway of Unit 0 again, but this time the plaques no longer hold him captive. Instead, he notices subtle shifts. Doors flicker between reality and impossible versions, timelines bending under his gaze. Alvarez stops at a door marked with a date from earlier in the investigation. He hesitates, then pushes it open. Inside, the scene begins to rewrite itself as he watches. People moving differently, clues appearing where there have been none before. He realizes he can change this, gripping the necklace. Alvarez starts speaking aloud, narrating the story on his terms. No more puppets, no more secrets. This ends here. As he narrates, the room responds, shifting from dark and oppressive to brighter, hope seeping through the cracks. But the entity's voice erupts through the silence, distorted, angry. You think you can rewrite the narrative? You're trapped in my story. Alvarez smiles, fierce, determined edge to it. I'm not trapped. I'm breaking the script. He moves to another door, the one marking Clara's last day alive. Inside, the room shows her alive, paintbrush in hand, no fear in her eyes. Alvarez reaches out to her reflection. You're not just a victim. You're the key. Suddenly, the corridor shakes violently. The entity's anger manifesting around him, but Alvarez stands firm, holding the necklace like a shield. With a surge of will, he commands. Rewrite. Reveal. Free. The hallway brightens further. The mirrors stop fracturing. The timelines begin converging, not breaking apart. The entity's voice weakens. This isn't over. But Alvarez ignores it. He steps forward, ready to face whatever comes next, not as a pawn, but as the author of his own fate. The hallway has stopped shifting. No more flickering lights. No more whispers bleeding through the walls. Only one door remains. It's unmarked. Alvarez knows without touching it that this is the end of the path. The heart of Unit Zero. His pulse matches the rhythm of the necklace in his hand. He pushes the door open. Inside is nothing. No walls. No ceiling. No floor. Just a black void with faint horizon of pale, colorless light. And in the center, something waits. At first, it looks like a figure. But the longer Alvarez stares, the less certain he is. Its outline sways like a candle flame. Never fully fixed, never fully human. Its face shifts constantly, cycling through dozens of expressions, ages, genders, even voices. When it speaks, it sounds like everyone he's ever heard in this case. Clara, Avery, the missing children, the dead witnesses, even his own voice. You've been telling my story, it says, but you've been telling it wrong. Alvarez forces his voice down. You've been pulling the strings since the beginning. Every timeline, every death, every missing person, all of it. The entity tilts its shifting head. I don't pull strings. I weave. The stories feed me. The endings keep me alive. Without them, it glitches. Voice cutting to static for a second. Fade. Alvarez's grip on the necklace tightens. Then I'm ending the story. Right here. The entity laughs. A sound like glass breaking underwater. You can't end it. You're inside it. You are written. And then the void around them changes. They're back in the lake where Clara drowned. Back in the alley where Alvarez first found Avery's shoe. Back in the station interrogation room. The entity is everywhere in each scene. Watching, waiting, recording. Alvarez suddenly understands the sick truth. It's not just feeding on tragedy. It's been writing reality itself around him to keep the narrative going. His heart pounds. The necklace grows hot in his palm, almost burning. He raises it toward the shifting face. This is the last chapter, he says. The entity leans in close. So close, he can smell something like smoke and wet soil. Its final whisper is almost gentle. You can't close the book if you're the book. Then the light in the void flares. Everything turns white, and Alvarez is gone. The white light fades. Alvarez blinks. He's no longer inside a void. Instead, he's sitting in a dimly lit room that feels familiar, like the back room of the station, but worn down, aged by years and neglect. A single door sits opposite him. It's battered with grain cracked, with 3 deliberate knocks echoing in the silence. Alvarez's breath catches. The knocking repeats, slow, steady, impossible to ignore. He stands and approaches the door cautiously, heart pounding louder than the knocks. He hesitates, then opens it. There, framed in the doorway, standing calmly, smiling with an unsettling calmness, is himself. Same face, same clothes, same worn badge. But the man's eyes, they hold something different. A knowing, almost amused glint, like someone who's been waiting a long time. Finally, the other Alvarez says softly, "You're on time." Alvarez stares, trying to process what he's seeing. Who are you?" he asks, voice cracking. The other Alvarez steps inside, closing the door behind him silently. "I'm you, or rather, a version of you we figured out first." He walks slowly over the wall. With a familiar corkboard, the investigation hangs, now covered in tangled red strings, photos, and notes. Everything you chased, the other Alvarez says, "I've already seen every turn, every lie, every shadow. And yet, here you are." He points to a blank plaque labeled with tomorrow's date. The date Alvarez still hasn't lived through. This is where it resets. where the story loops back. Alvarez's head spins. The other version leans in, eyes locked on his. You think you're free to choose. But all of this is a script, a loop, and only one of us can keep playing. He tosses a small brass key onto the table. The key gleams under flickering light. Unit 0, it's your turn. Alvarez looks down at the key, then back at himself. Why? Why me? The other Alvarez smiles faintly. Because you're the story now. You are the story. Suddenly, the knocking returns, but this time it echoes not just from the door, but from inside the walls, the floor, and the shadows themselves. The room begins to tremble. The other Alvarez steps back toward the door. Make your choice. Step through that door, or let the story consume you. The first Alvarez's hand moves, slowly, toward the key. The camera pulls back as the room blurs and twists around them. And just before the key touches the lock, cut to black. The screen is black. A distant rhythmic clicking echoes, growing louder, like a heartbeat or the tumblers of a lock turning. Alvarez's hand trembles as he lifts the brass key, its cold weight pulsing with something alive. He slides the key into the lock of Unit 0. The tumblers click open, but instead of a door swinging inward, thick darkness pulls him forward, swallowing sound, light, and time itself. Alvarez blinks away. He's standing outside the storage facility again. Dawn breaking, mist curling like ghosts around the locked metal doors. His phone buzzes. He answers. Detective Alvarez, we've got a case. The other Alvarez's voice whispers, distorted but familiar. He looks down. In his palm, the silver heart-shaped necklace gleams, catching the first rays of sun. Suddenly, the scene glitches. The sky flickers between bright morning and the dark, rainy night from months ago. Alvarez stumbles forward into the storage lot. He notices the door marked Unit 19, the place where it all started, is wide open. Inside, the smell of formaldehyde mixes with old wood and damp concrete. The rows of VHS tapes stretch endlessly, each labeled with dates spanning decades. Some past, some future, all somehow intertwined. He picks up a tape labeled with today's date. He threads it into the player. The screen flickers, showing himself younger, older, lost, found. All versions layered in fractured echoes. Suddenly, the tape flips. The camera pulls back to reveal another Alvarez. Watching as Alvarez through cracked monitor. Detective, the voice on the screen says, you never really left. The room shakes violently. Walls dissolve into swirling static. A torrent of memories, fears, and whispers flood Alvarez's mind. He sees flashes, a woman's whispered warning over the phone, a boy's desperate Morse code tapping, the smirk of a man who wasn't supposed to be there. Endless doors, each leading nowhere and everywhere. His breathing quickens. He tries to speak, but words fail. The screen in front of him flickers, and a final message appears, written in trembling, looping handwriting. You are the story, and the story is endless. The final door in the hallway creaks open. A blinding white light floods the screen. Then, silence. The camera cuts back to black.